Welcome everyone to this useful session. I'm so excited that you're here today. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced English learner, this session is designed to help you improve your English skills in an engaging and fun way. How are we going to do that? By telling stories, of course. Stories are one of the most powerful ways to learn any language. Why? Because they not only teach vocabulary and grammar, but they also help you understand culture, emotion, and human experience. When you listen to stories in English, you hear the language being used naturally, which is something that textbooks just can't always provide. Plus, stories stick with you much longer than just dry lists of words or rules. In today's session, we're going to explore how learning English through stories can transform your language skills. We'll also discuss why it's such an effective method, how you can get started with this approach, and share some tips on how to get the most out of storytelling as a tool for learning. I've been teaching English for a couple of years, and one thing I've learned from my experience is that stories are a bridge between the language and the real world. I've seen students make huge strides in their language learning by simply integrating stories into their daily practice. That's exactly what I want to help you do today. Before we dive deeper, I'll also give you a preview of the kinds of stories we'll be sharing in future sessions. These stories will cover everything from everyday situations to thrilling adventures, and they'll always be followed by explanations and tips to help you understand the vocabulary, grammar, and expressions used. So, let's get started. In this session, we'll explore the following. Why storytelling is one of the best ways to learn English. How to listen to stories in a way that boosts your learning. Concrete examples of how stories can improve your vocabulary and grammar. Real-life stories from learners who've used storytelling to master English. Practical tips you can use right now to start learning through stories. Now, before I start telling you all the great things about storytelling, let me share a quick thought with you. Have you ever listened to a session, watched a TV show, or read a book in English, and found yourself remembering certain phrases, words, or even the emotions of the characters long after you finished? That's the power of stories. They capture your attention in a way that other forms of learning just can't. Let me take a moment to break this down with an example. Imagine you're trying to learn the phrase, "I'm feeling under the weather." If you simply memorize this phrase, you might forget it after a few weeks. But if you hear it in a story where a character is describing how they feel after catching a cold, you're much more likely to remember it. Not only do you learn the phrase, but you also understand how it's used in context. This is exactly why learning English through stories is so powerful. It's not just about memorizing words and grammar rules. It's about understanding how the language works in real-life situations. And that, my friends, is where the magic happens. Why storytelling works for learning English. Let's take a deeper dive into why storytelling works so well for language learning. First of all, storytelling helps you learn vocabulary in context. If you only learn vocabulary by memorizing word lists, it's easy to forget what the words mean and how to use them. But when you hear words in the context of a story, you can understand their meanings more deeply. This context is essential because it connects the new vocabulary with something meaningful. For example, take the word adventure. If you only look up adventure in a dictionary, it might be hard to remember it. But if you hear it in a story where a character goes on an exciting journey filled with challenges and rewards, suddenly the word comes alive in your mind. You can remember the feeling of excitement and curiosity that comes with an adventure. Not only does storytelling help you remember words, but it also helps you understand sentence structures and grammar. When you listen to stories, you naturally hear how sentences are constructed in everyday conversation. You might hear how the past tense is used, how questions are formed, or how phrases like "I wish" or "I'd like" appear in conversation. By hearing these structures repeatedly, you start to absorb them without even realizing it. It's like learning through osmosis. Moreover, stories often include dialogue. This is important because when you're learning a language, speaking and understanding spoken language are key skills. Listening to conversations in stories gives you an opportunity to hear natural speech patterns. The way people speak in stories is often much closer to how people actually speak in real life, as opposed to the more formal textbook-style language. But that's not all. One of the most powerful aspects of storytelling is that it engages your emotions. When you hear a character's struggles, victories, or dilemmas, you connect with them emotionally. This emotional connection helps reinforce your memory of the words and phrases used in the story. If you can remember how a character felt during a particular moment, you're more likely to remember the language they used to express those feelings. Let me give you another concrete example. Think about the phrase heartbroken. It's not just a word you read in a dictionary. It's a word tied to emotions. If you hear a character in a story dealing with a breakup and using the word heartbroken, you immediately understand the depth of the emotion behind it. This makes the word much easier to remember and use in the future. How to use storytelling to improve your English. Now let's move on to how you can start using storytelling to improve your English. The first step is simple. Start listening to stories in English. This can be done through sessions, audiobooks, TV shows, movies, or even reading books in English. The key is to start with stories that are interesting to you. The more engaged you are in the story, the more likely you are to retain the language. For example, if you enjoy mystery novels, listen to sessions or read books in English that focus on that genre. The themes, vocabulary, and even the characters' actions will become familiar to you over time. Next, when you listen to a story, pay close attention to the context in which words and phrases are used. If you don't understand something, don't worry. Take notes, look up the meaning, and then go back to the story. The repetition and context will help reinforce your understanding. And here's a fun tip. Try to retell the story in your own words. After you finish listening or reading a story, try to summarize it in English. This will help you practice speaking and writing skills, and it will also force you to recall new vocabulary and grammar that you learned from the story. Real-life examples of learners using storytelling. I'd like to share some real-life examples from learners who've used storytelling to improve their English. One learner, Hannah, had been struggling with speaking English for years. She could read and understand English perfectly, but found it difficult to speak with confidence. So she decided to start listening to short stories in English every day. At first, she listened to simple stories with clear, slow dialogue. As her confidence grew, she moved on to more complex stories with faster-paced dialogue. After just a few months, student's name noticed a huge improvement in her speaking skills. She was able to hold conversations more easily and understood a wider range of expressions and idioms. Her listening comprehension also improved significantly. Another example comes from Sarah, who was focused on expanding her vocabulary. She started reading English novels and listening to sessions with stories in them. She made a habit of writing down new words and phrases from the stories, then using them in her own conversations. This helped her to internalize new vocabulary in a meaningful way, and she saw her speaking skills improve because of it. So, there you have it. Why storytelling is one of the most effective ways to learn English, and how you can start using this method to boost your language skills. By listening to stories, you can improve your vocabulary, grammar, listening comprehension, and even your speaking skills. And with time, you'll begin to notice that English starts to feel more natural, just like any other language you know. Remember, the key to learning English through stories is consistency. Make it a habit to listen to stories every day, and soon you'll find yourself using the language with ease. Thank you so much for listening to this session. I hope you found it helpful and inspiring. Stay tuned for more sessions, where we'll dive deeper into this method and share more stories to help you along your learning journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep listening, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process.